The Burma Front, February 1945. On a remote jungle island, nearly 1,000 Japanese soldiers are fighting for their lives. A powerful Allied force pounds their positions from land, sea, and air. The Japanese are cornered, outnumbered, and outgunned. Their only chance of survival is to escape.
The story goes that in the rush to save themselves, the fleeing Japanese waded into a swamp infested with giant crocodiles. Carnage ensued, and of nearly 1,000 soldiers, only 20 survived. What happened that night on Ramri Island spawned a horrifying tale of World War II. A tale of trapped, desperate men doing the unthinkable and paying with their lives.
It's just a bizarre way to die.
But did the Ramri Island crocodile massacre really happen?
Just the kind of question we love. We're hunting for the truth behind some of history's most bizarre cases. The mysteries of World War II. I'm a historian. I search for clues in the records of the past.
A crocodile that size could easily eat a human.
Yes.
I'm an urban explorer. I look for the real in what seems unreal, and follow my hunches wherever they lead me.
Do you think this might have been kind of a lemmings off a cliff situation?
It's about to get really, really weird.
As we take on a tale of record-breaking carnage to set the record straight.
As a kid, I was a huge fan of the Guinness Book of World Records. And one world record was so horrifying, I never forgot it. The record for the largest number of human beings ever killed by crocodiles.
Got a long ride ahead of us?
Yeah.
More than 900 Japanese soldiers, devoured by crocs at Ramri, also known as Yanbie, an island off the west coast of Myanmar, formerly Burma, on a night near the end of World War II. The story goes that giant crocodiles attacked a Japanese unit fleeing an Allied assault, and that out of nearly 1,000 soldiers, only 20 survived.
I phoned up the editor at the Guinness World of Records, and he tells me that the record's still standing. It's certainly not the kind of story you traditionally associate with Japanese soldiers in World War II. This is how we usually remember Japanese troops in World War II. In the beginning, they seemed invincible. Japan and China went to war in 1937. The Japanese crushed Chinese armies and slaughtered Chinese civilians. In 1940, Japanese forces took control of the French colony of Indochina, now known as Vietnam. And Japan signed the Tripartite Pact with Nazi Germany and Italy, becoming Adolf Hitler's ally and one of the Axis powers. The Nazis and Japan agreed that Hitler would conquer Europe, while Asia would become a Japanese empire. On December the 7th, 1941, a Japanese fleet attacked the United States naval base at Pearl Harbor in Hawaii. In the months after Pearl Harbor, Japanese forces crushed the Asian bastions of Western colonial power. Hong Kong, Singapore, the Dutch East Indies, the Philippines, and Burma, a weakly defended British colony the Japanese easily conquered. In only 6 months, Japanese forces conquered some 1.7 million square miles of territory. To win their astonishing victories, they had swept through some of Asia's toughest jungles, so dense and dangerous, the Western powers thought no army would ever penetrate them. So how did nearly 1,000 of these crafty jungle fighters wind up in the bellies of crocodiles at Ramri?
It's just a bizarre way to die.
Yeah. Well, let's see if there are any crocodiles around here then.
Yeah? There's a small channel over there. Maybe we should head there, somewhere just off the main river. Go and look in those shady bits. Is that one there? RJ, look, just off the edge of that point.
I think that's just driftwood. Let me check, see if I can get anything underwater.
Anything?
It's pretty murky. This is not exactly ideal visibility. Let's keep an eye out. They might be resting, they might be sunning themselves. It's hard to say exactly what they're up to.
I want to try something different and head to the village.
Okay, I might try going inside of these mangroves, see if I can see anything on land.
Okay.
The mangroves aren't showing us anything to confirm the Croc massacre story. I'm going to try another source. The eyewitness accounts of Burmese people who lived through the war. Anyone around here who's that old would surely remember something so ghastly and strange as a crocodile massacre. Ting Ang and She were youngsters when World War II came to Ramri Island.
The Japanese were running away from the British soldiers. They were going to cross the stream.
We ran to Zhongshout village at the other side. When they escaped, we didn't know whether they died. We saw bamboo rafts left by the Japanese. It looked like they used those rafts to cross the stream.
So these guys remember the Japanese trying to escape, but they weren't here to witness the massacre. Though they do tell stories of local crocs, big, hungry, dangerous ones.
Someone we knew was washing his legs from a boat in the river. Suddenly a crocodile attacked him, but he grabbed onto a tree. That's how he lost his leg, but he managed to escape.
And if you think these two guys are just pulling my leg, think again. Every year, about 150 people worldwide are killed by crocs. And saltwater crocs are the most aggressive. So crocs do go after human beings. And now we know that people here have been attacked by them. But where are Ramri's killer crocodiles now? Maybe RJ will have better luck out in the mangroves.
Whoa. Mingalaba, aren't you afraid of the crocs? Oh my God, I can't. I'm actually just getting deeper in. I see why, if you were prey, this would be a really dangerous place to hang out. But this guy tells me he comes here every day to fish and never worries about crocodiles. Isn't it dangerous here? Never. So it's safe. Huh. This mangrove swamp is treacherous. It sucks you in almost like quicksand. So even without the crocodiles already, this place is just giving me the creeps. There are these sharp little branches that are sticking out. The further I walked into the mangroves, the more stuck I got. This is nobody's idea of an escape route. But in 1945, nearly 1,000 Japanese soldiers tried to escape the Allies somewhere around here. Man, those guys must have been really desperate. But it's so weird. We still haven't seen a single crocodile. I'm not seeing anything around. I feel like if I wander a little too far away from the water, I'll actually just be making it impossible for me to find any. So maybe I'll try and make my way back a bit. Oh man, I need a wash. Yo.
Hey, how's it going?
Very good. So how are things going on your end?
Well, I met these two old guys in the village. They talked about the Japanese escaping and that they'd seen some kind of bamboo raft, but they hadn't witnessed it themselves, so they couldn't provide any more details.
The guy I talked to, he laughed when I mentioned it. But, you know, I think we need to look at where these killer crocs could be and just how they would go about killing so many people. So there's a place where we can get a look at them in person and I think get a little more information.
Brilliant.
Check it out.
RJ and I are investigating the story of a record-breaking massacre that took place on the Burmese island of Ram Ri at the end of World War II. The story goes that more than 900 Japanese soldiers met death in the jaws of giant crocodiles. But could crocs really have killed so many men at one time? To find out more, we're going to get up close and personal with the alleged reptilian perpetrators.
How old are these?
They are 2 years old. Their length is normally about 1 year, 1 feet.
I mean, these guys are about the size of our arms.
Yeah.
So this is 3 years.
Maybe nearly 3 years.
Holy. I feel sorry for the thing. First. And this thing has a substantial weight to it.
I'm quite happy watching you hold it.
Sure you don't? Holding a baby croc was awesome. But we need to meet the big guys. Whoa. This is literally crocodile-infested waters. These things are huge. How big do they get here?
The smallest is 10 feet long, and the biggest is about 18 feet.
Whoa. That's more than 3 times the size of an adult human. So once they get that big, how much can they eat?
They can eat from 5% to 7% of their body weight. We feed them at the rate. Crocodiles are not greedy like other animals.
A crocodile that size could easily eat a human.
Yes.
Have you heard of the crocodile massacre at Ram Ri Island?
I have heard about it.
How many crocodiles would it take to eat somewhere between 900 and 1,000 people?
It will probably take 1,000 to 1,500 crocodiles to eat 1,000 people. If we say one crocodile eats one person for 900 to 1,000 people, it's possible if you have more than 1,500 crocodiles, and their size must be over 10 feet.
That's possible at least, but do you think it would have been likely in Ram Ri Island to have that many crocodiles together at once?
Tan Tuk doesn't think so. He tells us that crocodiles are territorial by nature. Just one adult croc needs a lot of elbow room. If each croc would have devoured only one Japanese soldier, it's highly unlikely there were enough crocs at the mangrove to devour more than 900 men.
These guys, they're clearly hungry, but these are tiny fish. I'm not seeing how they're taking down 900 to 1,000 human adults.
No, it just doesn't make sense, does it? And you'd need well over 1,000 crocodiles to eat that many people.
Maybe the clues to what really happened at Ram Ri that night don't lie in the behavior of crocodiles. Maybe they lie in the behavior of the Japanese. What was it like to fight a war in a Burmese jungle?
I tell you what, there's somewhere I've always wanted to go. It's far to the north, and I think we might find some answers there.
Okay.
What RJ doesn't yet know is that I'm hoping where we're going next will give us clues to two World War II mysteries: the Ramri Croc massacre and the unknown story of my own World War II hero who fought in Burma more than 70 years ago.
Well, these are the Chin Hills on the western border with India, and this is the Tidim Road on the way to Tidim, the town.
Well, we're definitely not in croc country anymore.
Well, that's because I don't think crocodiles are the only clues of what happened in Ramri.
It's looking more and more likely hungry crocodiles alone can't explain the deaths of more than 900 Japanese soldiers on Ramri Island. So maybe the question to ask is, why did so many Japanese soldiers plunge into Ramri's croc-infested waters? We've come up here to the Chin Hills, near where some of the bloodiest fighting took place, to find out more about what happened to the Japanese army in Burma.
Wow, look at that. It's amazing.
Yeah, that's quite the view, isn't it? Although, if you are a group of soldiers, that's a lot of ground to cover.
So let's rewind to those early months of World War II, when the Japanese seemed unstoppable. By the middle of 1942, they had the Allies on the ropes. But that's when things began to change. America began a long and bloody campaign to retake the Pacific. By 1944, the tide was turning in the Allies' favor. But then, Japan launched a bold new offensive against the crown jewel of the British Empire, India. Britain threw everything it had against the advancing Japanese. The armies met near the Chin Hills on the Burmese-Indian border. It was some of the bloodiest fighting of World War II, and of all the war's battlegrounds, this place has a special meaning for me.
So why'd you want to come here anyway?
Well, this was my grandfather's war.
My grandfather's name was John Bruce Faulkner. In 1944, he was a 19-year-old lieutenant in the Royal West Kent Regiment. And he was here, one of thousands of British soldiers deployed to stop the Japanese.
That's amazing. He must have seen a lot of action then.
He did. He actually won the Military Cross for fighting in the jungle. And I've been thinking that to help us understand Ramri, what we need to do, actually, is maybe put ourselves in the boots of the people who are having to fight in the jungle. Ah, here he is. Hi.
Hi.
I'm Sam.
Hey, nice to meet you.
Song Kang-tong is a member of the Chin tribe who've lived here for centuries. In 1944, the Chin sided with the Allies and showed British soldiers how to live and fight in their jungle. Song's ancestors might have taught my grandfather how to live off the land.
So this is him making a trap. Aha. Dig a hole.
Yep.
What sort of animal are we trying to trap here?
Jungle chicken and other animals of their type can be trapped with this.
So I guess this is what they call basically a spring trap. What is that?
It's a berry which I took from a plant and inserted in here.
That is some precision engineering.
It is, isn't it? It's so delicate and carefully thought out. If I was a chicken, I'd be having that berry.
And let's see if I can get this without setting off the trap.
You've got no chance.
All right.
Wait! Oh, look at that.
This is impressive. It really worked. I did get the berry, though.
It's the last berry you're ever going to eat.
The hill tribes that sided with the Allies didn't just offer help. At first, some Burmese had welcomed the Japanese as liberators from British colonialism. But the Japanese soon revealed themselves to be cruel conquerors, and many hill tribesmen took up arms to fight for the Allies. They ambushed Japanese patrols, rescued Allied pilots, and even built a landing strip. In this jungle, they were masters of stalking prey and escaping death.
Okay. Man alive, I made it up here. Good. Look at you. You're like a monkey.
How did this guy do this?
Well done.
That wasn't that painful.
Why is it important to have a platform up in a tree?
Animals don't usually look upwards. They only look at the ground because predators like tigers only attack on the ground.
You certainly get a much better view up here, and I suppose that makes sense. There are enemy soldiers as well. They're not going to look up in the trees for you.
Did your grandfather ever talk about his time here?
No, very rarely. He was harrowed by the whole thing. He spoke about it only occasionally, and only ever when he was playing chess.
What did he say?
I can't remember in detail, but he certainly talked about the Japanese, he talked about the war, and he got a sort of faraway look in his eye, usually seconds before he checkmated me.
Hopefully in more than 4 moves.
Yeah, it was more than 4 moves. 5 or 6.
I'll never know how close I've come to standing where my grandfather fought. But there's no doubt that in 1944, this place was a battleground.
Wow,
We are getting near the tank.
that's amazing. I've never seen one of these upside down. Gives you a whole new perspective on it, actually.
Yeah, you're probably having a bad day if you see the underside of a tank.
But I think it's an M3 Lee Grant model. They didn't really work very well in Europe because they were very visible on the flat plains, but they were fantastic in the jungle. And we know that they were instrumental in turning the tide against the Japanese for the Allies. But they're all mentioned in the war records, but I brought some along. It'll give us a sense of what they were doing here and how they actually affected the war. Here we are, 30th of August. A and D companies will move at first light. D company on Axis Road with tank support. A company on the right flank. So you've got soldiers moving along with tanks flanking them. 0900, A company encounters some fire from the top of the feature, but continues advance. So they're still pushing forward under fire. 1400, one 15mm gun, which had given some trouble at 1000 hours, is engaged by the tanks and silenced. You see just how effective these were.
Does this say anything about your grandfather?
Yeah, we got this, which is a really touching thing. Week ending the 3rd of September 1944. Officers quitted during the week. Lieutenant J.B. Faulkner from the Royal West Kents caused battle casualties. So he was injured.
The fighting in these hills and in the plains below was the turning point of the Burma campaign. The Japanese advanced far beyond their supply lines, and the British defences held. Short on food and equipment, the Japanese struggled to survive in the jungle. They began to lose the Burma War. But how do we draw a line between the desperate fighting here and the massacre on Ramri Island? As defeat came closer, could nearly 1,000 Japanese soldiers have chosen death by crocodile over life in a jungle hell?
According to the Guinness Book of World Records, nearly 1,000 Japanese soldiers were eaten by crocodiles in a Burmese mangrove swamp on one night near the end of World War II. Here's what we found out so far. 1. It would have taken 1,000 very hungry crocs to instantly devour nearly 1,000 humans. 2. There's no way that many crocs were in the Ramri mangrove swamps that night. If crocs didn't kill all those Japanese soldiers, could they have died from living in a Burmese jungle? At the beginning of World War II, the Japanese were renowned jungle fighters. But as their supply lines stretched, and they had to survive with little food and water, life in the jungle got harder. In the Chin Hills, we had just a taste of those tough conditions. And now I'm going to listen to an interview with someone who actually endured them. A Japanese veteran of the Burma campaign, whose World War II memories are a chronicle of hell.
The enemy were firing big cannons one after another. On top of that, airplanes were attacking. We were hardly ever attacked by troops. It was simply unbearable.
Fighting the Allies was bad enough, but the jungle became another deadly foe.
In Burma, 6 months are rainy season and the 6 months are sunny. We couldn't dry off. The roads became rivers. We had no experience of the mountainous area and quickly fell apart. Supplies could not reach us because we were in the jungle and the mountain range was rocky, so there was no way that we could win.
From our time in the Chin Hills, I know what he's talking about. The big battles of 1944, when Japanese troops lost touch with their supply lines. After those battles, the formerly invincible Japanese began to crumble under Allied assault. By the last year of the war, their life in Burma's jungles was becoming more and more desperate.
It was January in 1945. For 8 months, we kept running away until the end of the war. I went through very hard times. I was running away all the time.
By 1945, Japan's Burma campaign had become a desperate retreat. 30,000 Japanese soldiers had been killed in battle. Malaria and other diseases had killed or disabled 20,000 more.
I still dream about it sometimes. Most people died from malaria. First, the vultures flew over. They eat the insides. After a week, there are maggots. Within a month, the body becomes a skeleton. I thought I might die from malaria too.
The road heading east from the Indian border became known as Hakotsu Kaido, or the Road of Bleached Bones, because of the sheer number of Japanese corpses littering it.
It was like that everywhere. But I think even more people died in the jungle than on the road.
By 1945, thousands were dying in Burma's hill country. But the mangrove swamps on the Burmese coast were even deadlier.
Hey,
you know, I looked into things from the Japanese side. This is an issue of the London Gazette from 1948. Disadvantages to the Japanese lay in the indescribable horrors of the mangrove swamps. Dark during the day as well as during the night. Of course, acres of thick impenetrable forest, miles of deep black mud, mosquitoes, scorpions, flies, and weird insects by the billions.
Oh.
And worst of all, crocodiles. So, lions and tigers and oh my.
Yeah, dangerous.
So, I mean, you can imagine just how terrible it was and demoralizing. And you know, they know deep in their bones that they were losing. Do you think this might have been kind of a lemmings off a cliff situation?
What, like a mass suicide?
It's feasible.
Well, it was certainly taboo for them to surrender.
Japanese mass suicides were common during World War II. Taught that surrender brought dishonor on themselves and their emperor, Japanese soldiers blew themselves up with grenades or deliberately charged into a hail of Allied bullets. During World War II, 1 Allied soldier was captured for every 3 who died in battle. Among Japanese forces, the ratio was 1 captured to 120 dead. During the battles of Saipan and Okinawa, hundreds of Japanese civilians jumped to their deaths rather than surrender.
So certainly for the Japanese, sometimes death really was the only option.
Japanese scorn for surrender might explain why they treated their Allied prisoners with notorious brutality. During World War II, a British or American soldier captured by the Germans had only a 4% chance of dying in captivity. But in Japanese prisoner of war camps, the death rate was nearly 30%. Enraged by reports of Japanese cruelty to POWs, Allied troops often killed Japanese soldiers who did try to surrender. Those Japanese who made it to Allied prisoner of war camps were supposed to be uncooperative. As my grandfather discovered in the final months of the war, when he found himself in charge of some 3,000 Japanese prisoners.
Ulado?
Yes.
Sam.
Very nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. Thank you very much for coming. This is my grandfather.
Oh, your grandfather. Oh.
John Faulkner, standing above a sea of Japanese prisoners.
Yes.
There's a fascinating inscription on the back of them. Sprawled beside the rubber plantation in the Cocaine Lake area of Rangoon is a prisoner of war camp containing 3,000 Japanese. But since incidents of disobedience within the camp, the new commandant, 20-year-old Captain J.B. Faulkner from the Royal West Kent Regiment, takes a firm hand with the prisoners. So I'm trying to find out exactly where this was. Where was the rubber plantation and where is this Cocaine Lake?
This area is Cocaine Lake area, this area. Because that area is near Cocaine village. It was called Cocaine Lake.
That's extraordinary to think. So this was a rubber plantation
Yes,
as well?
many rubber plantations. Not only there, over there.
That's stunning. So I'm actually standing exactly...
Your father also standing there.
Grandfather was standing.
It's crazy to think that my grandfather was only 20 when he was put in charge of a prisoner of war camp. And it's deeply moving to find the place where he proved his strength and courage. And that's not all I've discovered here. La Aung told me that before the Allies could take Burma's capital Rangoon, now called Yangon, they first had to capture a strategically critical island northwest of the city, whose airfield they needed to launch airstrikes against the Japanese. That island's name was Ramree. At the end of January 1945, the British attacked Ramree with overwhelming force. Ramree's Japanese garrison faced surrender or death. This was the Allied assault that, according to legend, drove so many desperate Japanese into the jaws of crocodiles. Or did they simply take their own lives as their warriors' code demanded? Or did something else kill the Japanese trapped on Ramree? We're back in the area around Ramree Island. We've heard about a World War II veteran who still lives around here. We're hoping he can tell us more about what happened when British forces landed here in 1945.
Hello.
Yes.
As a 20-year-old during World War II, Shui Tung-an worked as a translator for the Allies. Can you remember when the Allies landed?
The English army landed January 1945. So many battleships and aeroplanes all in the sky, about 100 I see.
Were you afraid?
Yes, we are afraid, and all villagers hiding in the house.
Was there any fighting? Did the Japanese defend the island?
They landed at about 10 a.m. And Japanese retreated.
On 21st January, British units approached Ramree Island, 50 miles south of Akyab, for the second Burma landing within a month. Seizure of the island of Ramree gives the Allies a new base with potential airfields flanking South Burma.
The British pounded Ramree. A powerful fleet of cruisers, destroyers, and gunboats shelled it, while dozens of bombers and fighters attacked from the air.
The coordinated bombardment reduces the enemy shore defenses. At 0930 hours, the landing gets underway. The men encounter practically no opposition.
The Japanese on Ramree couldn't stand up to this overpowering assault and hid in caves in other parts of the island.
great.
Man.
Oh, look at that.
This has got to be it, yeah? Okay.
Wow.
Yeah, it goes on in for quite a while, and you can tell this is military. It's not just a naturally occurring cave, and oh, look at that. Oh, they're moving.
That's amazing. You can see the all the chisel marks all along here. This isn't a cave for 1 or 2 people. This is, I don't know, 50 people, at least 50 people in here.
You got to imagine this bunker, it's not the only one. They must be all over this hillside.
Yeah.
So whatever one you're closer to, you just run in, and that's pretty much it.
So they've been expecting an attack, and they had prepared for it, but maybe just not for the scale of the Allied onslaught.
It looks like when the Allies landed on Ramri, the Japanese simply went into hiding. But what would have driven them to abandon their hiding places and take their chances in croc-infested waters? I think the answer might lie in Allied war records on the other side of the world.
Oh, hey, RJ.
Hey, Sam, what's up?
Check this out. I found a report called Operation Block, and it describes how, by February the 14th, most of Ramri Island was cleared of Japanese combatants, except for a few in isolated pockets.
Well, I'm looking into something called the Senshi Sosho, and it's more or less the official Japanese account, if you like. There's over 100 volumes, but there's one in particular. It's called The Collapse of the Burma Defense.
According to Japanese war records, the soldiers trapped on Ramri Island tried to retreat to the mainland. It didn't go well.
So it was 4 military vessels and about 100 civilian boats, and they were used to try and make an escape, but they were discovered and fired on, and after that, the Allied patrol was so tight it was pretty much impossible to escape by boat. So the stranded Japanese troops, they then spent 5 days camped out on Minjong Creek, where we visited. And eventually, they crossed on the night of the 18th of February.
February the 18th. Bingo. The night of the Croc massacre. Described in official Allied and Japanese reports. Looks like we're about to discover what really happened that night. RJ and I have found the official British and Japanese versions of what happened on the night of the Ramri Croc massacre. If we compare them, how will those 2 versions match up? And what will they reveal about the Croc massacre mystery?
A climax to the blockading operations was reached on the night of 18th February. At 0200, 2 o'clock in the morning, 2 large formations of Japanese in boats and on rafts made a desperate attempt to cross the Meingong Channel.
It was single file. They were meant to swim the 300-meter distance. Things went well at first until about halfway through, and then one of the troops got into trouble. He was drowning, and he cried out, and that's when searchlights lit it up, and the swimming troops were showered with bullets.
Except for a few swimmers, it's doubtful whether any survived the crossing. It's estimated that at least 100 Japanese were killed or drowned that night. And it concludes, it's difficult to assess the number of casualties inflicted on the enemy during Operation Block. 200 killed is regarded as a conservative estimate. About 40 loaded boats were known to have sunk. Possibly another 50 died in the mangroves from exposure and want of food and water. 14 prisoners were taken, thus ended Operation Block.
Yeah, that's far fewer than the 1,000 that we had at the beginning, though. So the Japanese account says about 50 actually made it across, and then the others who weren't killed made it back to Ramri. But eventually, it looks like about 500 made it to the mainland.
The Allied and Japanese war records give different accounts of what happened on Ramri. But they do agree on 2 things. 1, a lot of Japanese soldiers died, escaping from Ramri on the night of February 18th. 2, none of them were killed by crocs. The Allies reported that the crocs showed up the morning after to feast on the dead.
The next day presented a grim appearance. To add to the horror of the scene, crocodiles, previously reported as rarely seen, appeared on the Chang banks in increasing numbers. So there's mention of crocs, but they were only afterwards. So both our accounts seem to be in agreement that there was no croc massacre.
So what's this account that we've been looking into all along?
Well, I've an inkling what the start of all of this was, and I think it's time to go and visit the people who've been perpetuating this legend and to set the record straight. The Guinness Book of World Records has proclaimed the Ramree Croc Massacre to be the worst crocodile disaster in history. I know it sounds like heresy to say it, but as a result of our investigations in Burma, we think that the Guinness Book may have it wrong. I'm here to meet the editor-in-chief, Craig Glenday.
Hi, I'm Sam. I've come to find out about the worst crocodile disaster. Where did the record come from?
This record came from a very reliable source, we presumed, a book published in the 1960s.
This is just part of a much broader selection of evidence that we found, which proves that the record was wrong. We know that many more survived the attack.
The military records are interesting because we obviously didn't have this at the time, so we accepted the record, it seems, without knowing perhaps the full story. Thank you for letting me know. It's fascinating to see these, which we have never seen. I suspect we need to make a change to our next edition.
Hey, RJ.
Hey, what's up, Sam?
Right, guess where I am?
Where?
Well, I'm in the factory in Germany where they print the Guinness Book of Records.
Very cool.
Yep. Do you want to have a look inside one?
Yeah? Pop them open.
Right, here we go. Most human fatalities in a crocodile attack, question mark. New research by the National Geographic Channel, however, has cast doubt on the story, or at least on the extent of the deaths.
So we've officially changed the historical record then?
We absolutely did change the record. How cool is that?
Now we have a good idea of what led to the Croc Massacre legend. After the bloody battle in the mangroves, the Allies took only a few survivors captive. The next day, crocodiles were seen in great numbers, feasting on the dead. A terrible sight that gave birth to a macabre fantasy. Case closed. I'm happy that we've set the historical record straight. When we expose the myths and tell the truth about the Second World War, we honor my grandfather's generation, a generation that fought so hard and suffered so much in some of the most dangerous places on Earth.